Today, I'd like to talk to you about if it's worth doing well, it's worth doing badly. Wow. If it's worth doing well, it's worth doing badly. I was listening to the Radio 4 the other day, and I heard this person talk about the fact that someone just gave him a trumpet to play. It was a very accomplished, famous a musician, but he wasn't beforehand. Someone just gave him this trumpet and he started to play it, and he loved it so much, but he was so bad at it, but he didn't care at all. He loved the instrument. He loved playing the trumpet. He didn't want to play for big arenas. He didn't want to even play for his family. He just wanted to play because he enjoyed it. He said, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing badly. And I'm sure there's lots of things we could say about that. You know, someone said it today about coming to church, you know, afterwards. Hey, I was 20 minutes late, but as you said in your talk, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing badly. So I still turned up. Fantastic. You may be a parent and you may be thinking, oh, I'm messing this up so many times. But you don't give up, do you? Yeah? If it's worth doing well, it's worth doing badly. And you may be similar with a musical instrument, a sport, or your profession, or a relationship. If it's worth doing well, it's worth doing badly. And today's passage, which we heard earlier on, was about Jesus doing something absolutely amazing. Jesus he saw the temple in Jerusalem, and he saw that actually it wasn't the way it was meant to be. And when we look at this passage normally, we can kind of think, oh my goodness, that's Jesus over here, and I'm way over there. If it's worth doing well, it's worth doing badly. And Jesus saw the temple. The place was meant to be a place of prayer to his Father in heaven. And the Jewish people could worship, but they only could worship if they bought a temple cattle. And they had to get the coins changed to have temple coins. And so there was this exchange rate that was extortionate. And there was this all this cattle around and the noise and everything else, which was crazy. But also the fact that all the cattle were in the places where the Gentiles were meant to praise or worship. And so they couldn't even get in there anyway. And so Jesus went around kicking down all of these stalls, and a whip came out. This is not the Jesus we hear about in Sunday school, is it? But the passion, the zeal for his Father's house came upon him. And he said at the end of the passage we heard today of Jesus saying that destroy this temple here in 3 days, and it'll be risen again. And they said, well, this took 46 years. But Jesus was talking about his body, that if he died and rose again, he would be back in 3 days. What's that got to do with me in Lent 21 in a pandemic? It's got a lot to do with us, because if it's worth doing well, it's worth doing badly. And the first thing I want to just touch on today that Jesus stood up for was injustice. Jesus saw such injustice that was happening in the temple. No one could pray, and if they could, it was at a really expensive price. But it just wasn't the way that it's meant to be. It was meant to be a place of freedom, of for everybody, inclusivity. There was meant to be a place for the poor and the rich, those who knew God and those who didn't. But they couldn't do it, so Jesus stood up for him. If it's worth doing well, it's worth doing badly. You know, sometimes we hear this, oh my goodness, I can't go around kicking down stools and bringing a whip out and getting rid of all the injustice, maybe of the banks or maybe of the greed or maybe of other things. But like Mother Teresa says, don't try to do great things for God, do small things with great love. We have the capacity to do things with great love. You know, sometimes I think, I'm not really good at standing up for injustice. But actually, I am. You may think yourself you're good at standing up for injustice, but you are. You have the capability to. I was reflecting back on the time when for Watford Hope, the charity for homeless, about 5 years ago, I dressed in Coral Evensong clothes with my Book of Common Prayer in my pocket, and I abseiled down St Mary's Church in Watford. I think I've still got part of the brickwork, and I clung on and I went down. I did something ridiculous for the injustice, the fact that my fellow human beings only a few miles away were living homeless. Or the time when I opened up the church for free for the charity of Mind, and I remember the firemen blasted me with water so that people could donate some money. There are a few times, yes, I can do more. I don't want to let ourselves off the hook, but I want to encourage us that we are good at standing up for injustice. If it's worth doing well, it's worth doing badly. A person who I was on retreat with a few years ago, Bishop John Packard, he was the Bishop of Ripon in those days. But at the time, before that, he was a vicar in Yorkshire, and especially around Sheffield Way, where all the coal mines were starting to close down. And you see, it's very easy that you could be on the side of those who are against the coal mines closing down or for the coal mines closing down. His church was filled with both. If it's worth doing well, it's worth doing badly. And he learnt on the hoof how to do reconciliation, how to love, how to forgive, how to stand up for both sides. Friends, what is it that God is asking you to do today in Lent? There's something, it could be small, but that's okay. There may be a people group. It may be something about the environment. It may be something to do with your present condition with the coronavirus. What are you passionate about? Because God has put that in you so that you can change the world around you in little ways. Don't get yourself too twisted up thinking, I need to change the world tomorrow. We always overestimate what we can do in a year, don't we? But we underestimate what we can do in 5 years. If it's worth doing well, it's worth doing badly. Like Jesus, who did things incredibly well, powerfully well, instantaneously, God is calling us to have the same passion within us to stand up against injustice. The second thing I believe God is trying to remind us today in a Lent journey is to keep God first place. I'm talking to people who love God, who love him so much. But just like the Pharisees at the time, they loved God so much, the Jewish people, but they allowed customs. They allowed just general society. They allowed money to get in the way. They allowed just compromise, just to settle in. And Jesus saw this and he just kicked it all down. You heard of the saying, haven't you, of how if you put a frog in hot water, it will jump out. But if you put a frog in cold water and gently increase the temperature, it wouldn't know its difference and it would die. Jesus doesn't want your faith to die. He wants it to be pruned. He wants it to be flourishing. There was a hymn writer called Cecil Frances Alexander. Cecil Frances Alexander. She was a wife to a vicar in Dublin, and he wasn't particularly that well known, or actually he wasn't really looked upon as someone quite nice in Cecil's family circles. But nonetheless, she kept on praying and being with God, putting God in first place. Because she kept on putting God in first place when she was in Dublin, in Ireland, in the 1840s, she started to have within her a sense of actually some wonderful hymns. And so she started to pen this hymn called On a Green Hill Far Away, reminding us of Jesus dying on the cross and rising again. And then deep within her, there was this, even though she was in poverty in the 1840s, and her husband wasn't doing particularly well either, something within her that created the wonderful carol Once in Royal David City. And it continued because she kept putting God in first place. This humble wife of a vicar who became actually a bishop. Interesting, isn't it? If it's worth doing well, it's worth doing badly. You never know where God's going to lead you to. Another hymn that she wrote was All Things Bright and Beautiful. She really wanted God put on her heart children, and says that she wanted children to really know that God is with them, and to put God first place is so important. Like Cecil Frances Alexander, like myself, God is calling you to get rid of the rubbish. Get rid of those things that we've allowed just to seep in. The social media, how much of that You look back 20 years, we used to just have the telephone, letter and knocking on the doors. How many times we look at emails? Let's cut that out. Let's spend more time with God. Do you trust him? I'm sure you do. Then you don't need to keep on trying to please other people. Cut that out of your life. And just one other question is do you want to know God more? I believe you do. But you've got to make a choice between the TV or between other stuff and God. There's only 24 hours in the day. We've all got the same as Smith Wigglesworth, the same as St. John of the Cross, same as Mother Teresa. We're all human beings and we all have got the same amount of time. I dare you today to put God first place and see what happens. Like God kicking out all of those money changers and all those sheep and goats and whatever. God wants to do that to you. Clean house spiritually. The final thing I want to share with you today is this. Not only does God want you to stand up for injustice, not only does he want you to put God first place, and yes, doing it badly because it's worth doing well. The final thing is to keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. I know it's hard. I know it really is hard because as a pro follower of Jesus, being paid to follow Jesus in the church, I know it's so difficult. You'd think being a pro, like a vicar or a minister being paid full time, is a dollar, it's easy, but it's not. Doesn't matter whether you've been a Christian for a week or even a long time. In fact, Thomas à Kempis says actually those who have been walking with Jesus less time have less pain than those who have been walking with him so much longer because we've fallen so many times. But there's grace, isn't there? Jesus says, destroy the temple in 3 days and I'll destroy the temple and I'll raise it in 3 days. Jesus was reminding us that we can't do it on our own. We can't stand up for injustice on our own or put God first all the time. We so need his help. And this is, friends, part of our Lent journey is that we've got to do it in God's strength. You know, there's someone called William Cowper, another great hymn writer. And you know the saying, I don't know if you've ever come across this saying, that's basically, God moves in mysterious ways. You've probably heard it lots of times. Sometimes we say it jokingly, it's a bit like, your treasure in heaven, things like this. But it's just like a bit of a cliche saying. But William Cowper wrote that because he tried his best to keep his eyes fixed on Jesus, even though he went through the depths of great depression. He said these words, God moves in mysterious ways. His wonders to perform. He plants his footsteps in the sea and rides upon the storm. Isn't that powerful? Some of these hymns which we've forgotten to sing in churches, the theology and the wordsmiths who've written these are just incredible. He plants his footsteps in the sea and rides upon the storms. God moves in mysterious ways. Friends, today, I wonder if you feel knocked down. Well, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, who died and rose again in 3 days. I wonder if any of you here feel tired today. Well, God is in the business of restoring. He is your refiner's fire. He's the one who will lead you along quiet paths. I wonder if any of you feel dead inside. You may have lost a loved one. You may be feeling like an opportunity has been lost. Well, God is definitely in the trade of the resurrection. Keep yourself close to Jesus. Doesn't matter how many times you fall, he always comes and picks you up again. God is the God of the second, fifth, umpteenth chance. I wonder if anyone's listening today feels a lack of calling. You know, it's okay for the pro-Christians, the vicars and the ministers. We'll leave it to them. No, Jesus is saying, no, I don't want you to be let off the hook that easily. You've got a calling. You've got amazing gifts. Yes, you've got a job. Yes, you've got a family. But wrapped within all of that, there's a wonderful golden thread of your calling. You're called in the morning, you're called in the lunchtime, you're called in the evening, you're called at night time. You're called when you're young, you're called when you're filled with life, you're called when you're feeling in your middle age and when you retire, and when you have retired. God is still calling you. I wonder if any of you needs a recommission, where Jesus says, keep your eyes fixed on him. And finally, I wonder if anyone here just needs to be reconnected with Jesus. They may have done things wrong. You may have felt like, I can't follow Jesus anymore, or I can, but I'll just be a servant. Well, Jesus says he is the prodigal father. He's the one who will run to you. He wants you to return. William Cowper also wrote this: "Oh, for a closer walk with God, a calm and heavenly frame, a light to shine upon the road that leads me to the Lamb." One of the things that I do to keep myself close to Jesus is to have good sleeps, is to have common sense, is to have people around who are good counsels to me, getting in God's word, just that sense of actually looking at coincidences that happen. I love comedy at the moment. I've really seen that God coming through that. And that sense of actually being with my family. So those close to you, I encourage you to really build into those relationships and see Jesus. He's drawing you to him at the same time. Friends, today we've shared quite a bit about if it's worth doing well, it's worth doing badly. So I just say to you again, stand up for injustice, whatever small ways you can. Keep God first place in your life. Just say no to those things that take your attention. Like C.S. Lewis says, they will come at you every day of your life. They will not stop. You have to say no to it. And finally, no matter what, like William Cowper, who found it really dark at times, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. And whatever storm you're going through, whatever battle, you will prevail. You are an overcomer, and you certainly are a battler, because Jesus has called you. Amen.